You are up and running.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
I will call this meeting to order for the Ray Bradbury Collection Committee meeting of the whole at 6:04 p.m. Let's do a roll call. Kathy?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Deborah?
Here.
Nathan?
Here.
Jean?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
Gerardo?
Here.
Rebecca?
I'm here.
Okay, and then we also are joined by quite a more people. We also have Ty.
Here.
Awesome. Harry. Okay. Josh.
I'm here.
Okay. Lori.
Good evening.
Hi. And Douglas Stiles. Yeah. And Carl Edison. Got everybody. Okay. And Gail and John, of course. Okay, so up next on the agenda is public comment. I know, Josh, you had something prepared. Okay.
I do. So go ahead now. Okay, thank you.
That's fine.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to the Board of Trustees for allowing us to join you this evening. I'm going to read just some parts of the letter that I sent this morning. I apologize for sending it in the 11th hour today, and I appreciate that you've had some time to read it. Part of why I would like to read some of this evening is we had been asked by the trustees a few meetings ago why the change from the loan agreements that had been drafted to our current request, which was the transfer of ownership of the collection. So I'll read a bit of my statement here on behalf of the Historical Society. As the Waukegan Public Library Board of Trustees considers action on the Ray Bradbury collection, the Waukegan Historical Society hopes that this document helps the Board of Trustees to understand why the Society shifted from a loan agreement to requesting the full transfer of the Ray Bradbury collection. The Waukegan Historical Society has been working with the Waukegan Public Library staff and council on various iterations of an agreement, from a memorandum of understanding to an intergovernmental agreement, which have failed for various reasons. A long-term loan agreement was presented to the Waukegan Historical Society in April of 2021. This agreement is not acceptable for the Waukegan Historical Society, and since its proposal, the Society has asked the trustees to consider a full transfer of ownership. I'd like to highlight some segments of the draft agreement, particular the segments that the Historical Society had most issues with. One was under Article 2, Section B, long-term loan. The loan period was for a full 20-year term to be renewed, but the elements that we had the most issue with was the quoted as follows: the library reserves the right to recall objects from the collection and loan on short notice if its sole discretion it seems necessary. The library further reserves the right to cancel this loan for good cause at any time, but agrees to make every reasonable effort of notice thereof. And there was also item C, appraisal, insurance, special exhibition requirements. Under costs, it says the Society is responsible for all direct costs of the loan: conservation surveys, conservation treatment, exhibit preparation, framing, bracketing, mounting, handling, rigging, crafting, packing, shipping, courier travel, staff facility or exhibit expectations, insurance coverage, and any other loan-related costs identified and required by the library. Our objections to these are that the full financial burden of conservation and care of the collection was put on the Society, that the library could remove or recall any and all of the collection at any time, And the society, we wish to keep the collection intact and not sell portions of it or break it apart. The loan agreement, along with the library's Ray Bradbury collection policy, did not protect us against this. We also outlined in the letter what the full financial burden looked like for us at the Historical Society by highlighting costs of the conceptual exhibit design of the children's library room in the Carnegie, which estimated is to be $250,000 to $350,000. The conservation survey, we crunch some numbers and estimate that a 15-day survey would take 120 hours and be a rate between $18,000 and $30,000. And conservation costs can vary greatly, but range from $250 to $1,500, with costs rising depending on the conditions as well as the rarity of the book in this 6,000 book collection. The Waukegan Historical Society, representing its members, donors, supporters, and our partner, the Waukegan Park District, cannot take on the collection with the above conditions. The Society has great concern for the state of the collection. In the draft agreement, the Society would assume all financial burdens of trying to fix any problems of the collection due to inattention of the library. There are too many unknowns at this point involved for the Historical Society to be responsible for all direct costs without ownership of the collection. The Society also cannot plan to exhibit the collection accordingly, knowing that the collection could be removed at any time by the library. Funds granted to the Society are given with the intent that the exhibits are accessible to the public at the Waukegan History Museum at the Carnegie. And I know I've taken up quite a bit of time, but I'd like to highlight two more elements of the letter we prepared. One is that we have been discussing this with the Waukegan Public Library since January of 2019. I realize that most of you currently on the Board of Trustees have not been around since that time. That's part of why we prepared this letter, to fill you in on the history of our work over the last 3 years. It was during that time, back in 2019, where we had the greatest concern about the collection, and in particular where it was being stored, which was in sort of a garage or loading dock section of the Waukegan Public Library. We are now grateful that it's no longer there, but we have concerns about what might have happened to the collection during that time, and I still have some concerns about where it's currently being housed in an electrical closet. And I will just conclude by reiterating a few things that we've said all along. The Waukegan Historical Society is committed to continue to honor Ray Bradbury. Transferring the Bradbury collection to the Waukegan Historical Society will fulfill Bradbury's wishes to have it as part of the Waukegan Carnegie Library. Those who knew Ray Bradbury best, including his children, estate, his biographers, and his friends, know and have expressed that the full transfer of ownership of the collection is best for not only showcasing it in the place that he loved dearly, but would also ensure that it's properly preserved. There's no better place in the galaxy to show Ray Bradbury's personal library than in the very room where he himself says he fell in love with reading, the children's reading room of the historic Carnegie, Waukegan Park Carnegie Library. And we are scheduled to open to the public in summer of 2023. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward, as well as with my team here representing the Historical Society, to discussing this issue with you all further.
Thank you, Josh. John or Gail, do you know if there were any other public comments?
There were not.
Okay. Then I guess we can move to the next section on the agenda. The minutes from for the meeting. So we would need a motion to approve the agenda for the Waukegan Public Library Board of Trustees meeting, Ray Bradbury Collection Committee of the Whole, February 8th, 2022.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so Rebecca.
Not minutes,
Fine.
agenda, not the
That's
minutes.
fine. I got you. Okay, and we have to go down the list, correct, Carl, since it's online? Can't do all. Okay.
That is correct.
Kathy,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Deborah,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Jean,
Yes.
Larry,
Aye.
Gerardo,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
myself, aye. Okay, so the agenda is approved. Next up is our new business, so the discussion and possible action regarding the donation, loan, or sale of the Ray Bradbury collection. I don't know how everyone else is feeling, but since there was that letter, do you think we should have Carl read any important parts of his memo just to have that fresh in our minds, or do you think that's okay?
Before you do that, like before, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion.
Okay, noted.
Just so you all know, I did talk to Mr. Escobar about this. I don't know, I think it was last week, Brian. And I agreed with the Douglas's approach that he should recuse himself, but I also expressed that if he has some factual points that he wants to interject, if he believes that the library board is not being given the correct facts, if he has that knowledge, I don't think there's any wrong with him saying, excuse me, but this is what I believe the actual facts are as he understands them. And just so you know, that was the advice I gave him.
Thank you. Carl, would you be able to read any of the important parts of your memo?
Yeah, I can certainly summarize it. And,
Okay.
I don't want to just read it to you. I'm sure you've all read it. But essentially, the biggest concern I have is the desire to just have the collection donated to the Historical Society when the Library Act specifically provides for donation only to another library that is tax supported or to a member of the Illinois library system. And the Historical Society is neither of those. That doesn't mean we can't address what Mr. Bill has set out in his letter to you today. I think he raised some very legitimate points. I did do a quick response this morning that I did a reply all, just so you know my quick thoughts on that. I did it from my cell phone while eating breakfast, so it wasn't necessarily a great work of art. But essentially, I wanted to say thank you for the information. We do have a board. The majority of the trustees have not been around. And, I'm not going to get into the history of the board not necessarily getting along and working well, because I wasn't there. I can't put blame on anybody, and so it would be wrong of me to do so. I will say this. I personally didn't think a whole lot of the intergovernmental agreement that was drafted. And I only have one version in my system from Douglas. I don't know if it's the one that Mr. Bill was talking about, but my feeling is you have the authority to either loan the collection or sell it. And if you were to sell it, then there's a publication and an opportunity for others to bid on it. Probably not the best approach. I don't think anybody thinks that's a great idea. It's my understanding there was some discussion about selling parts of it. It seems that the intent here of the bequest was to have the collection together unless there's materials in there that are damaged. They were stored in different places in his home. If you go through the 2 different appraisals, the first one is, you're finding stuff throughout the house, the garage, some of it having evidence of moisture damage. And so that's existed for quite a while. And who knows what conditions some of the materials are. And it could be that it would be appropriate to, identify certain parts of it that are just not able to be, restored, maintained, collect, you just don't want them. And so I think there could be certainly the ability to dispose of items that are less than $1,000 in value, or between $1,000 and $2,500 easily under the Public Library Act, if that is the case with respect to some of the items. You really don't know that until you have a actual basically going through and getting an inventory of everything that is there. And that is one of the things the Historical Society is wanting to do. Certainly you can have certainly the library has the ability to do the same thing, right? And this is a policy decision. Could the library, as the one that was given the collection, do everything with it and not share it at all? That is one of the options. I don't think that is one that any member of the board is suggesting is appropriate. I haven't heard that. So from my perspective, we should be talking about how to accomplish protecting everybody's interests. I don't see anything in an approach to a loan that can't protect everything that Mr. Bill has talked about, and that protects the library's interest in wanting to, from time to time, use part of the collection for its own purposes, for its own displays. But that takes notice, and it ought to be, significantly advanced notice, whether it's 90 days, 120 days, what's reasonable. And I don't like the language that says at any time we get to just go and say, hey, give us those 80, pieces that you currently have on display at the Carnegie Library Museum. All right. If I were this Historical Society, that would not be acceptable. And we shouldn't request that. But we should make it reasonable that we cover who's covering it from an insurance standpoint. I think probably both entities. What happens if the Historical Society believes that part of the collection is not able to be saved? It's in a position that it ought to be disposed of, and it's the library's responsibility then to find it no longer necessary or useful for the library purposes in order to be able to dispose of it. So all of those issues that we talked about last meeting and here in Mr. Bill's communications, we can address. And I know there is a desire of some of the trustees to just donate it, transfer the ownership to the Historical Society. But it's my legal opinion, you do not have the lawful authority to do so. And there's a section of the Library Act that I cited that says if you receive a donation, a bequest, which is through somebody's death, they're giving property, that's a bequest and a will, to another. That's what this is all about here. The collection was had a bequeathed to you, and you have an extra fiduciary responsibility with respect to that. 5 years before anything was drafted, giving the collection to the library, there was about a 2-sentence note saying, I've been thinking about maybe giving the part of my collection to the library, and it would be wonderful if it could be in the Carnegie Library that he had ties to. But he did not give it to the Historical Society. He did not give it to the city that owned that library building at the time. He gave it to the Waukegan Public Library. And you have the responsibility, the fiduciary responsibility as trustees to do what you think is best with that collection. So while I didn't read it, I said a lot. And I told Rob, lawyers are verbose, and I would try not to be, and I already failed. So maybe it'd be better if I just take questions, Rob, if anybody has them. And it's up to you, Rob, whether we keep this discussion among the board members, because it is a committee meeting. It's held in public, and to whatever extent the board wants to engage in communications with the others that are participating, that's up to you as a board. It might be helpful to at least initially just have discussion among the board members and see where you all are based upon what Mr. Bill has said and what I have said in my memo and here tonight.
I will say that I believe that the purpose of inviting the members of the Historical Society onto the committee is so that we could have that open dialogue and have that back and forth that has been missed in previous meetings. But I think a quick opportunity for board members to ask any questions of Carl about the memo, and then we can transition to the next thing. So if you have any quick questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Larry.
Oh, very good. Okay. Thank you. Well, I'm looking at my notes here. I have quite a few. Carl, so is there, just asking, is there any way that the library could donate the collection or gift it to the Historical Society as you read the law without putting the library into some sort of legal potential contest or liability, and the city of Waukegan too? I'm just curious, is there any way, or is it pretty, it sounds to me from what you're saying, from what I understand, it's really your opinion, your legal opinion, professional opinion, that would could cause liability for the library to do so. Is that right? Am I hearing you correctly?
Well, I certainly believe that if challenged, if the board were to say, okay, we're donating it, title goes over to the Historical Society, and any resident, any member of the board that challenged that would likely be successful, saying that you did not have the authority to donate it to the Historical Society and that you could loan it or you could sell it if you followed the procedures in the Public Library Act. But my professional opinion is that a donation would be subject to a successful challenge.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I see Nathan unmuted.
Hey, Carl. I had a question about precedent. Has there been other, in your research on this, have you found other agreements, other kind of donations or things that have happened between different, between like a library or historical society that might kind of shed light on this situation?
I have not. It's my understanding there have been at least shared assets, if not a just outright transfer or gift to the Historical Society in the past by the library board. Whether they looked at the Public Library Act and had a legal opinion as to that, I have no idea. If I just don't know, Nathan, what happened back then, but it's my understanding the library and the Historical Society have past relationships and transfer of property to the Historical Society. I think that's accurate. But I have not researched of any other situation like that.
Okay, thank you.
I will say this, by intergovernmental agreement with other libraries, you could certainly do pretty much anything you wanted, including donation.
Thank you, Carl. Since we have them here, would a member of the Historical Society want to confirm about the question Nathan just had, / Carl, of past precedent? I guess I see Douglas's hand. Doug, do you want to go?
Sure. Carl, in the past, we've certainly utilized 4-12 of the Act, which basically supersedes the other portions of the Act. In the original powers, it says that each Board of Library Trustees will carry out the spirit and intent of the Act, establishing, supporting, and maintaining the public library, and in addition to, but without limiting, other powers conferred. 4-12 does provide powers to the board to deal and enter into agreements. And as far as I can tell from what I've researched, it could be a donation, it can be part of maintaining the Historical Society, and it's the items that it's putting on display for the public. It's very similar to what the library does. And it's my understanding that 4-12 certainly allows this. Now, I think what the board, or I'm talking about the Historical Society, is saying is that yes, we enter into this agreement pursuant to 4-12, in which you're going to help maintain the thing by giving us. They are willing at that point that if the Historical Society ceases to exist, it'll revert back to the library, the collection. So in a sense, it's kind of like a loan, but it's not quite, but it gives a little more freedom. But I agree with you. I think this 4-12 does allow.
Douglas, I apologize. I don't mean to interrupt. I was looking for you to confirm about if there was past precedent of when the library has donated or gifts to the.
Have donated historical items to the Historical Society.
Okay.
The library has gone through its collection, and there are a number of things that they over the years that they've collected, and they are now in the possession of the Historical Society.
Okay.
I don't know what the value is of those individual items, Rob. So I can't give any opinion on whether there was authority or not to do so.
I have a question more for Carl too.
Hi, do you want
Larry,
to answer that?
Yeah, Larry, just real quick.
Wait, yeah, sure.
So the two main collections that the library has donated, transferred to the Historical Society was the Illinois History Collection that used to be at the library, and the US EPA records of the Waukegan Harbor cleanup. And the Waukegan Harbor cleanup records, that was like a $1.4 million archive. We're happy to have those public, by the way.
Thank you for answering that, Ty. Deborah, I saw you were unmuted. Did you have a question?
I didn't have a question. I was just kind of, well, I guess maybe I did. And this is probably directed to Carl. And what the part that concerns me is in this section of that donate the collection. Says the library board does not have specific authority to donate the collection, but only to other tax-supported libraries. for library systems. So is that our main reason why, is that the main reason why we're saying that right now we would be opening ourselves up for trouble if we donated the collection?
Yes, that is correct. The statute does not give authority to donate to any private corporation, any not-for-profit corporation. It only provides for donation to another tax-supported library or a member of the Illinois library system. And, you know, I understand what was just stated about section 4-12, but that provides that the public library may participate in the maintenance of the historical museum and library upon the terms and conditions as mutually agreed. That doesn't give any specific authority to donate property to the Historical Society. And the provision of the statute that is most specific as to your authority to donate property specifically states it can only go to a library that's tax supported, which the Historical Society's museum and library is not.
Okay, so essentially what this section, this clause is saying is that it would be against the law for us to donate this, against that particular library law.
Correct.
Or the Library Act.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, Larry, I do know that you have your question. Is it, I see you as well, John. Larry, is it a quick question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So Carl, it would seem to me there's two elements here. There's the restriction on it must be to another library, but an even or tax-supported entity, publicly tax-supported entity. But to even do that, doesn't the law also requires, I read it, that the library first, before I'd even think of even donating it to any kind of, or selling it, or leasing, or any other kind of act, that the library, the owning library, has to deem the collection no longer necessary or useful for library purposes. Isn't that another element, another hurdle that needs to be considered too before in all of this?
Yes, that is a hurdle that is present for any of the options, whether it's a sale or donation, even just going through the minimal value items that you can just put on your shelf and have a price or even free on it. You have to, as a board, find that those items are no longer useful or necessary for the library purposes.
Follow up real quick. So is there any legal definition as what no longer necessary or useful actually means? Is there any sort of I mean, it's pretty obvious to me what it means, but maybe there's more specific kinds of examples or precedents or anything at all? I'm just curious.
I did not research that with respect to other entities. It's a finding of the library board. And
okay,
if the individual trustees believe that there's no purpose or use that you have for this collection, then you can do whatever you want with it. But that's a policy issue, and I think courts would look at it as you have discretion to make those decisions. And I doubt that it'd be readily successful in that challenge. I said that poorly, but I don't think a challenge would be upheld. I think most judges would give that discretionary authority of the board quite a bit of weight.
Thank you.
So John, I see you had your question, but real quick before you start, I do want to say after this, I do want us to move to dialogue between the two sides. I don't want to have everybody waiting for too long to be able to have this discussion. So John, would you like to ask your question?
Just a point of clarification and just to further request from Lori if there's any documentation that existed, because I looked through every email and every file in our server that I could look through, and there was no documentation about a donation as far as I understood, the EPA collection was fully digitized and therefore was being recycled. And they wanted to rescue the Citizens Advisory Group wanted to rescue that from being recycled, so we handed it over to them.
Just to clarify on that, it's not completely digitized. We recovered it because this was at a time when the Trump administration was removing a lot of what was digitized online. And so we had to ensure that the physical copy still existed. So that's what happened with that.
Sorry, I was getting water. Lori, did Brian answer that correctly? Respond?
I think so, Ty, unless you or Brian would add anything else.
Okay. So now that we've had the opportunity to ask questions of our lawyer based on the memo, what's next? From our legal counsel, there is not it would be illegal for us to donate this. There is past precedents of us apparently breaking the law and ignoring that and doing that in past situations. So yeah, I just wanted to open that up to talk.
Rob, would it be better if I may ask, for this part of this discussion to go into a closed session where we might feel more free to engage with our guest tonight from the Historical Society? I mean, we would have that option too. It's up to the board. I just think it would be a little freer discussion, if we could do it that way. But
I don't know if we can go into closed discussion with non-Board of Trustee members. Am I correct in that, Carl?
The board can invite whomever it wishes into a closed session, but is there anything here that's hampering anybody from just saying what they think?
We're comfortable talking in public.
Okay.
We welcome that opportunity. So thank you. Ty has his hands up.
Yes, Ty.
Can we have a little bit of conversation with Carl here on the memo?
Sure.
Specifically that section 412. President Freeman, when you say you think the library has broken the law in the past, I think it really is looking at that section 412, interpreting. I mean, it says maintenance of such historical museum and library upon such terms as conditions as mutually agreed upon. I think it's that word maintenance that is really the problematic word right now. What if maintenance instead meant support? And maintenance does mean support, right? So you read that section completely different. The library, the Historical Society, in this Library Act can work together. The library board has the power to work with historical societies and historical museums on top of all these other powers to mutually support what is needed. And it's not limiting to donation or loan. It's not anything specific there. It is what is mutually agreed upon for the support of the museum. Is that a poor interpretation of that?
It's a different one than I have. Libraries are non-home rule entities. They only have the authority specifically provided by statute, and that authority that is reasonably contained within that direct grant. When you have a section, the courts will look at this and interpreting the law by looking at the statute in general, and where you have a specific section, such as the donation section, that controls over a general provision. I don't have any doubt that this library board has the authority to do a lot in cooperation with the Historical Society. But what I don't believe that section 4-12 provides is the ability to just donate this collection and then wash your hands of it, especially when you've got the kind of extraordinary language about the fiduciary duties with respect to donations to the library.
I see you're unmuted. I don't know if are you still adding more?
No.
Okay, sorry. I just was trying to give you a chance. Lori, do you want to speak?
I just wanted to clarify something for Carl that I think we've clarified with the other trustees, but for your benefit, when Mr. Bradbury passed away, that Carnegie was not an entity where the gift could be given. But the family and the estate have made it clear this is what he would have wanted. So I just want to make sure you understand that wasn't an option at the time.
Yeah, I understand.
We're trying to respect that.
Well, I understand input that was recently provided by the trustee and two of the daughters signing on to the letter. And, you know, I've read the trust documents themselves. I've read the 2012 letter written 5 years before he wrote the, I think it was 2012, might have been earlier. I might have my dates wrong, but there was a 5-year period before the making of the bequest that he wrote, I'm thinking about donating some of the property to the library, and it'd be wonderful if it could be at the Carnegie. And I understand that Carnegie wasn't available at the time of the drafting of the trust agreement or at the time of his death. Yes, I do. I get that. And he wanted the collection to be given to the library, and he wanted to, you know, from what I read, he would love to have it displayed at the Carnegie Library, right? I don't think anybody's disputing that. That doesn't mean to donate it to the Historical Society. You know, it's if you can get it there to the Carnegie Library, that's where I'd love to have it. The daughters are saying that's what he would like to have done. That's what the trustee is saying. And frankly, folks, we can get that done. That's not a difficult thing to do. It has been in the past. I have confidence that we can do this better than was done in the past. That's all I'll say.
Well, may I make a comment?
Real quickly, I just wanted to add a follow-up that I had.
Okay.
I do think it's important to note that we have our board has voted on this couple times that led to a tie. And when we reach a tie, it means we stick with the status quo and it remains where it is. I don't believe that the vote will change and that it will still be the same split. And if so, then we're still just spinning our wheels and we need to come to a next step of what could happen. Larry, if you have something.
Correct, thank you. Real quick, just from my personal experience, because I love history in all kinds of venues. And I, over the years, have been to all kinds of museums, historic sites, libraries, Washington, D.C., the National Archives, all kinds of libraries across this country, and museums too. And it's not unusual at all for me to see when I'm looking at exhibits on loan from. So it seems from what I've seen in the world of museums and historic sites and libraries, it's rather common that institutions loan other institutions exhibits, to display. I mean, it's not like we have to own it before we can show it. It's on loan to them. So that's the thing that still puzzles me. And the other part of all this that just, real quick, I'll add this, that we have a statue in front of our library of Ray Bradbury. Now that statue didn't come for nothing. There was a lot of money raised for that. As I remember, it was at least $150,000. That doesn't include the pedestal. That doesn't include the fundraising expenses for library staff to raise that funding. As I believe that, I would think it would be accurate to say that statue out there is up to $250,000, $250,000. And the donors, including myself, I donated substantially to that statue, gave with the idea that that would be the gateway into the library where the collection is. And it just seems to me that if we go gifting this collection totally 100% to another institution, we don't even have a paper clip or a pen that we can show in our library. I mean, they get all and we get nothing. I mean, I don't see the justice in that either.
Hey, Rob.
Thank you, Larry. Yes. Let's stay on topic of the Ray Bradbury collection. Okay, Larry, I appreciate your sentiment about the other, but we gotta stay focused on this. Yes, Nathan.
I'd really like to hear from some of the other trustees, maybe, who haven't had the opportunity to speak yet, to kind of see what they're thinking and where they're at with things. And I see Gerardo with his hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, Gerardo.
Hey, yeah. I feel that one of the hurdles that we haven't addressed is declaring the value of the collection in a way that we don't need it ourselves. And one thing that I keep thinking about is the acronym MUSTY, which relates to the weeding process for libraries. I actually pulled it up so I don't misquote it. But MUSTY is a mnemonic acronym coined by the American Library Association in cooperation with the Texas State Library back in 1976. And this is to help libraries within the weeding process. And so M stands for misleading, can occur more rapidly with technology, something with false information. Ugly refers to the physical condition of the book. Superseded, there are newer copies available. Trivial, look for appropriateness of the collection. And does it work within the curriculum? And then the why in musty, your collection has no need for this. And for me, I wish we had a purpose for this within the library that works with our bandwidth. I feel that we haven't been able to activate the collection if it's been in storage for so long out of sight of the public, where people are able to see it, but it's still behind several barriers is what it feels like to me. So I feel that this falls within the weeding process of the why and musty that it's irrelevant to our curriculum at the moment.
Thank you, Gerardo. Did Kathy, Rebecca, Jean? Kathy?
I have a question. One of the issues that it seems to be a sticking point in loaning it is the cost of maintenance. And I believe that there are grants available to help maintain the collection, but would the Historical Society have to own the collection in order to look for grants, or could we look for grants, we as a library? Anybody know? Gail, somebody?
I can answer that. You, as a library, as a governmental entity, can certainly apply for grants. The society can apply for grants, but what gets the better attention is if you have a joint request and you're serving a broader scope and for different purposes. And that is something that a lot of the organizations and the governmental grants look for. If you are doing it cooperatively, that seems to carry a bit more weight than if you're just one entity seeking it.
Thank you.
Somebody else have more on it, but that's just been my experience with other governmental clients.
It is, and we can. It's just never really been on the front burner as far as a priority for the library. So it's certainly things that we can do, and I agree wholeheartedly that partnership with other organizations makes for winning grants.
And I would say that our strategy in terms of pursuing funding has always been more to serve the community beyond our taxpayer limits. And so to date, it has not fit within that realm. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Jean or Rebecca? If not, that's okay. Okay.
I
Oh,
do
there's
actually have a
Rebecca.
question.
Yeah.
Is the I was just looking again at the memo that Carl wrote, and it was talking about if the value was less than $1,000, then is it my understanding that we could donate it or disposed of, I guess, if it was less than $1,000? And is there any way that it could be like somehow divided up and then donated? Or is that not really like in groups of like 1,000 or less?
Oh, I suppose you could, but on the opposite side of that, when you are trying to buy things and you've got a requirement as far as how much value an item is before you have to go out and get bids for it, you can't split it up. So you get in $1,000 increments, so we stay under the 20 or 25. And so to me, that's kind of trying to thwart the purpose of the act, because you've got appraisals of over 400,000 and over 1.2 million, if I remember correctly, of this. So that would be parceling it out considerably. Rebecca, could you do that? You could. I just think it would be subject to challenge. And if I were involved in that case, I'd rather have the other side of it because I don't like to lose.
Okay, and then I guess I do have one more question then. If we were to, publish that we were going to, have this for sale and the Historical Society was going to bid on it, I mean, it seems like there's no, if somebody else bid on it, we wouldn't have to accept that bid, right? Like, but if the Historical Society was the only one to bid on it, we could just sell it to them that way.
Correct. If you had nobody else bidding on it, but once the sale terms were done, if nobody else bid on it, and strange quirk in the statute, you'd have to first, before you consummated that sale, ask the city of Waukegan if they want it for the same price. They have, that's in the act. Your mothership can come in and say, yes, we'll buy it for the same value that you were going to sell it to somebody else for. Strange, but that's in the statute. If the city didn't do that, then if the Historical Society were the only bidder, then they would be the one that would get the property, yes.
Hello.
Hi, Jean.
I'm listening and I'm hearing, and all we seem to be talking about is one thing and how to give it to the library. We're not even trying to determine, is there any other way that we can work this out? It's just, it's a cut and dry, either we do it or we don't. And I don't understand why we're not even looking at how can we both be happy with the outcome of what we're working for.
Thank you, Jean. I agree. I would love if we could. I know there were major issues with the previous loan agreement, but if there was a more amenable, even, fair, not sure the right words to use, loan agreement, would that be a place we could start from instead of breaking legal counsel and choosing to do all sorts of other things? Is it so? That's to Historical Society. Is there a way that we could start reset button? What could a better loan agreement look like?
I think one thing from our perspective that we feel it's really important that the collection remain intact as a collection. And, there's certainly opportunities to, look at if there were something that needed to be loaned, but we cannot bear the cost of the maintenance. That's the biggest issue. So if the library is willing to bear that cost, I think we can look at other options.
If you owned it, wouldn't you be bearing the cost of it? So then I'm confused.
Yes, we would be bearing the cost if we owned it. But we're still under this last loan agreement where there was that recall aspect. So I mean, that's part of what has to be figured out. If we are moving forward with a loan, it's the recall aspect. It's right now putting everything on the shoulders of the Historical Society. We fix the collection if anything needs to be fixed, and then 5 minutes later, the public library can come pick it up and take it away from the Carnegie. And these are things that were non-negotiable, as told to us. So if this is something different now in the interpretation of whatever it may be, we have always been open to it.
Yeah, Ty, I wasn't involved. I don't know where the trustees sit with respect to that, but it would be my strong recommendation that those types of revisions or provisions that you were objecting to be substantially changed, if not completely thrown out. Hey, that's where Carl Ottison's coming from. But that's the legal side. I don't see any impediment to the two parties sitting down and actually getting an agreement that makes sense to both sides. And there's, if the library is still owning it, it's got responsibility for it. It's on loan then to the society. The society has certain responsibilities with respect to it. And both parties are wanting it to be protected, intact, and only separated out if there's any, I would think, the library board would have to agree to it. I don't think the library should just say, okay, you know what, tomorrow bring it back, because we decided we want to do something with it. If it's a 20-year loan term, you've got to have protection on the interest, the expense that you are putting into it as a society. And that the library can't just take it back, because there's significant expense that the society is looking to put out to have this displayed, curated, displayed, all sorts of stuff that has to happen with it. So I just read the stuff that Mr. Bill talked about today, and I kind of cringed because I disagreed with the thought processes, but I wasn't there. The board was either giving that direction or the attorneys were taking it that direction on their own. I have no idea how that happened. Okay.
So, Ty, if I'm hearing you correct, then what, and Lori as well, that if we were to reach a mutually agreeable solution in which, let's say, the building was the historical society of this collection owned by the library. The library supports financially its conservation and preservation. And then we can, as far as like, and then make sure that it kind of stays there and you don't have that threat of recall hanging over you, that would be something that would be agreeable to you moving forward.
Our preference is still the transfer of the collection, but we are under the great obligation to Bradbury to get this done. We know what he wanted. We know what needs to happen. If all of this after 3 years ends up with the library agreeing to properly preserve and conserve this collection, and we get it out to the public to see, that is a win for all of us.
Thank you, Ty.
I have a question for the Historical Society. Does the Historical Society, when the Carnegie is completed, plan to charge an admission charge to get into that building?
We're actually not to that decision level yet. We've had two different kind of models of how the building could operate. We don't know. There could be a fee. I'm not saying there isn't. If there is a fee, there would still be opportunities for free museum visit days, as you see throughout the state. But we're not ready to commit one way or the other on that.
Well, would there, in terms of, just to follow up, in terms of some exhibits, museums are free, but some exhibits there's a charge to get into. Would there be some contemplation perhaps of having a fee to get in to see the Bradbury collection, provided that it got loaned there?
With where the collection would be located, and with the intent of wanting to celebrate that collection, I would not see that being an exhibit that it would have its own special charge on it.
I see. Thank you.
So I just wanted to do a quick straw poll of the board. What about support if representatives from the board, library, and society could sit down to work out terms that were acceptable for a loan? If you would agree to that, does that question make sense? Okay, mostly seen thumbs up. I'm gonna believe I see all the thumbs. So I'm gonna go in reverse order for this one. Rebecca?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Gerardo?
Yes.
Larry?
Well, let me just preface that real quick.
Yes,
of course,
I
would want them to have it loaned to them. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Jean?
Yes.
Nathan?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Myself, yes. And Carl, do I include the Historical Society members in this straw poll as well?
No, it's for the board and your
Okay.
committee of the whole, and it's the Bradbury Collection Committee. And your responsibility under the policy is to make a recommendation to yourselves. Originally, I'm sure it was intended to have a smaller group, but I think it was correct approach to have the full board sit as a committee of the whole and look at this together based upon where you were at your last meeting. And I think it would be appropriate for, let me toss this out. We were 4-4 split last meeting on what to do. if we could have one trustee from each side of that vote, along with probably myself and John as the library representatives, and then whoever the society would like to do put together. Let's not hold this off for long. Let's have a commitment to meet and go through what I suggested in my brief response today was go through, everybody outline their concerns, their needs, their wants. And then we just say, okay, identify each one of them and talk about how best to resolve them, draft it up then and bring it back to both groups for your consideration. Does that, anybody have a problem with that type of a game plan? Bob, it's all yours.
Historical Society, does that sound like a plan?
We're certainly happy to work with the library board of trustees and draft an agreement that is a win, as Ty put it quite well, for everyone involved. Yes.
That's good to hear. I think we all want this to be available to the public and be cared for in the best way possible, and for both sides to feel like they're doing the best they can. Okay. Should anything else that we need to add in, or should we adjourn to close executive session?
Well, if I may add, again, I'm all for of course, for the Carnegie having the collection to display as a loan. I do think from time to time, with proper notice, not just pulling anything out from underneath them, but we have an interest too, in that, we may have a Bradbury festival at our library, or a Bradbury reading seminar or something. It would be, I think, very worthwhile to have maybe the typewriter he typed. I know I've seen that typewriter on display at our lab. It's not like that collection is just sat in a closet. We've had parts of it on display. I would like to be able to have some ability to display some of that collection in our library as well. So not to pull the whole collection out, but that would be my concern and need and all this.
Thank you, Larry. And I know that our side will make sure that is passed along in the agreement that's coming up.
Excuse me, Rob.
Yes, Jean?
What will we be going into executive session, closed session for?
That's what I was just going to ask.
Yeah, I don't think we need to, it seems like at this point. So if anyone, guess we don't have to do that. If you guys don't want to come up with a price to sell it. Don't think any of us do. Okay. So this seems like it was good. And moving forward, shall we go on? Yes, Carl? Am I missing something?
No, I'm sorry. That was
Nathan, sorry. I saw.
No, okay. I just was wondering how, like, when we're gonna, like, to kind of move the ball forward with this, when we're gonna choose, like, who's gonna be on that committee.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to volunteer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be from the, I don't know. You can put me on the aye or the nay side, depending on how you're voting, I guess.
I'd like to nominate Rob.
You don't want to go yourself, Gene?
No.
Maybe instead of myself, there could be someone else that, Deborah, I don't know if you would, or Larry.
Well, I would be willing to do that. I would be willing to represent the loan part of it. I would be willing to work on that committee, whatever.
Okay.
Larry beat me to it.
Okay. So there's that. And then we have John and Carl. And how about we send out a rally after this to figure out a time that could meet to discuss this, I assume could still be virtual and it doesn't consider, it's not a meeting then, correct?
No, we would just have 2 trustees, correct? And who are the trustees? Larry, and what's the other one, Nathan?
Yes.
Okay, and then
Deborah really wanted to do it.
Oh, Larry beat me to it.
well, if you want, we could have a vote by the board to decide which one of you gets to do it.
Come on, Carl.
Just saying, I'm here for everybody. Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors.
You've got my emails. I think I've got. I don't know if I've got your direct one because Jonathan usually just has the board as a group. If you could, Nathan, Larry, send me your email and phone numbers, and then if we could get from maybe it's Mr. Bilt, the contacts that we would want to have. He's obviously got my email, and we can coordinate that. I'll make sure that we can get this going and have a meeting here hopefully in the next 7 to 10 days.
That sounds fantastic. I do believe we need to make a motion as what we are presenting to the board, or correct? But the board's here, so.
You did that through a straw poll, just kind of saying
Okay.
support. So how about this? Now doing it as a formal motion that we have Nathan, Larry, Jonathan, and Carl participate with representatives from the society to work out acceptable agreement on a loan.
I make that motion.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll.
I'll second it.
You'll make me sound good, right, Rob?
Yeah, I tried to write all that down. I could not keep up.
You can send me the draft motion or minutes, and I will clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up.
Okay, awesome. So we had the motion by Jean and the second by, who said that? Deborah?
Deborah.
Okay. So going down the list as the official aye or nay, Rebecca,
Aye.
Gerardo,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Jean,
Yes.
Nathan,
Aye.
Deborah,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
and Carl Wood. What is Brian still recused? Is he able to nominate people to do this, or just keep him recused? And
If he wants to participate in the vote, I'm not going to object.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir.
I'll take the yeah, sure. Is that an aye? Cool. Aye for myself. That passes. Fantastic. Don't believe we need to do any trustee comments. I think we've all had enough comments and times to give those today. So I think we just need a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion to adjourn.
I second.
Who seconded? Sorry, I was looking down.
Kathy.
Kathy. Okay, so Nathan and then Kathy Rod. Okay. Kathy.
Yes.
Okay. Brian.
Aye.
Deborah.
Aye.
Nathan.
Aye.
Jean.
Yes.
Larry.
Aye.
Gerardo.
Aye.
Rebecca.
Aye.
Myself. Aye. Thank you. I guess.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm glad that we got to do this. So the meeting is adjourned at 7:18 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your night. I'll start that email for getting the talks going.
Good night.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you next
Bye.
week.
Have a good evening.